Ann Barklow. I'm a horticulturist with the City of Greenwood, and I am here with Barb Munch today in her pollinator garden. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to put one of these together and how to take care of it. So Barb, I have to ask you, when you moved here 2 years ago, I'm kind of curious, why didn't you just put in the little shrubs and mulch like most other gardens?
So when I moved in the spring of 2019, the garden area here that you see now, basically was nothing. It had mulch and it had plastic to keep some of the weeds down. And there was one tiny little shrub that was not very happy. And I looked around at what else was here in the neighborhood and I thought, I don't really know what I want, but I don't want what I call boring plain bushes. I really want to have something that's going to attract bees. And so I'm very lucky because Ann is my neighbor. And I said, Ann, what can I do with this space? And she said, you can do an annual perennial flower garden. So that started last summer. This is only my second summer of growing plants.
Well, you must have had a lot of experience before you got here.
Zero. I had, virtually zero experience. I knew nothing.
Wow.
So I started out by listening, and I started by taking the Master Gardener class. And I could have been intimidated because most people in the class knew a lot, and I knew very little. But that's how I learned, by taking the class and reading the materials, and listening to people who know stuff and letting them teach me, and then working with master gardeners who know so much. I can ask them a question. It's as simple as, Ann, could you tell me if this is a weed or a real plant? Because I don't know yet. But I've learned, and then by doing, and it's really fun. Yeah. And I'm really happy now.
Yeah, she really is. And I see her out here all the time. As we're standing here, it's really distracting to talk to Barb because the buzzing in the background is so loud. But I'm really trying to concentrate. And I want her to talk a little bit about our process. You know, if you could talk a little bit about how did you start? Like, did you do something to the soil?
So I started by asking the guy who does my lawn to dig up the clay that was here. And he brought in a rototiller because I tried with a little shovel and it was just pitiful. It was just plain clay. And he rototilled it up, virtually all of it except where the drain pipes are. And then I went up to the store and bought some black cow, you call that? Compost.
Some compost.
So I put in many bags of black cow, and then I put in the plants that you helped me pick out, and then I picked out because I thought these are really cool. When I went in town to the Festival of Flowers, like I saw the Syningia, and I'm like, that's really cool, I want one of those. So I could pick out some of them that I knew, and then you helped me get a few. And so then I put the plants in the ground, but then more importantly, the one thing that I remember from my grandmother, who was a wonderful gardener, was leaf mulch. And she called it black gold. And when you get really good compost, that leaf mulch, it is black, and it's very cool. So then I put leaf mulch on the top, and I tried to put in a couple of inches to keep the weeds from coming. But when I did that, digging up, there were no earthworms, there were no frogs, there were no bugs, there were no bees. Nobody was here because they didn't know that there was. And now when I dig, there's earthworms all over the place, and frogs and crickets, and I don't know, what else, but it's now a living garden instead of just a plain clay.
Yes, it really is. And I know a lot of us try to go to no-till, but sometimes there are circumstances where you just have to get it going, and then you can no-till from there. And that's what Barb did here with her garden.
Yeah.
And I don't see you out here a lot, but I think a lot of people are intimidated by pollinator gardens because they think it's a lot of work. But you don't spend all that much time out here.
No, I still work a little bit. So
yeah.
I balance my time, and I come out when it's cool or after the rain, and then I'll do some deadheading so that the plants keep blooming. But once the plants are in the ground, and that's the fun part, is digging a hole and putting the plants in.
Yeah, yeah.
But then it's also fun to watch and come out, not like every day, but every couple days, and in the spring and summer you can see something brand new. This plant is blooming that wasn't blooming before.
Yep, yep. And I come over sometimes and see what she's done. And she often says this makes me happy.
It does. So it's not a huge time commitment. Once they're in, they just grow on their own. They just need sunlight and water and good soil. And now the soil is improving, where instead it was just plain clay, now it's a lot healthier.
Yes, and I do that too. I keep adding that leaf mulch. And I guess one of the perks, one of the things Barb didn't mention is that when she started the Master Gardener class, she came over to the greenhouse and started working there and learned a lot about how to start seeds, how to grow plants, and learned what they were, and got to do that. And one of the perks for volunteering for the City of Greenwood is that you get free leaf mulch. You have to bag it up yourself, but you get free leaf mulch and you can keep adding. And I would see her with these big trash bags coming in, and then she would, I'm gonna go get some more. And so that has really, so then at that point your garden starts to sustain itself, and the microorganisms get in there and start working the soil for you, and you don't have to do all that manual labor, and we don't want that. One of the things Barb mentioned was trimming things back and keeping them blooming, and when you deadhead, it signals the plant to make more flowers because its whole cycle wants to go to seed. So if you don't let it go to seed, or if you postpone the inevitable by trimming back these dead heads, then you can keep that plant blooming longer. And I'm going to have her demonstrate that so that you can see what it looks like to deadhead some of these perennials and annuals.
So I left a few to show you. This is a dead flower, right? This is a live flower. Oh, there he goes. And then cut down so you get all the stick and there's no stick left. So there's one, there's two, and there's three. Now, usually what I do with these, if I'm just doing a few, is we call it chop and drop. So chop them and then drop them on the ground because they'll decompose and become food for the next flowers. And what you can see is there's some flowers already blooming, and then you can see some that are waiting their turn. This guy, this guy. So as soon as the dead flowers are gone, these will say, ha, it's time to grow. And they'll grow to be like these, and then they'll attract more bees.
That's great. And it's so easy and fun, and here you got to talk with the bee while you were working. You know, I
do talk to the bees.
I often have that in my garden. You know, I'll say, hey buddy, 100 times and no human is in sight, you know, and that's what goes on in our gardens. We're not alone. It's not kind of a boring, repetitive task, even though sometimes it can be fun to prune hedges, but mostly to me it's just kind of boring and repetitive. And the other thing about shrubs, when we have them in these round, tight circles, is that birds can't get in there to get shelter, and they certainly can't get in there to make a nest. So, so leaving your shrubs to grow naturally is actually better for them. Now, the problem with that is that many, like in Barb's garden, she has a very narrow front bed. It's 4 feet, and so that's just not wide enough. I don't care where you go, but if you put a 3 foot by 3 foot hedge in there or bush, it's going to grow 6 feet by 6 feet. It just is. And then you're going to be trying to cut it back. So that's why in a narrow border such as Barb has here, it's really great to just put a perennial annual. Now what she did is she put in some African blue basil that looks like a little shrub. So from the street, no one knows. But of course in the winter, it's going to die back and be fairly empty in this garden when she's done, which to me doesn't bother me. So I don't need an evergreen shrub. So she's done a great job with that. You know, you also talked about planting, and I think it'd be great to demonstrate planting right now. So if you wouldn't mind getting, I think you have a vinca left, and maybe we could place that right over here. I think you talked about, oh, you have a little empty space here.
There's a space.
So we'll go ahead and I'm going to have the camera come up a little close and it'll show you exactly how she's going to plant this in case you want to start planting some of these. And I wouldn't consider vinca a great pollinator plant, but you don't have to have complete pollinator plants. And it's beautiful color.
So all it takes, I wear gloves because sometimes there's ants there and I want to protect my hands from getting cut. That's the only reason.
You don't want any fire ant bites?
No, I don't like fire ant bites.
All right.
So
Well,
this is the little plant that's going to go in the ground. The first thing I do is move away the mulch that's on the top. And then I dig a hole that's about twice as big as the plant. So the plant has
Boy, look
room
at that
to
soil.
grow.
That soil is pretty nice too.
It's way better than just the plain clay that was here.
And that's very good. And the reason we do that, the reason we loosen the soil around it, is that when the plant first goes in, that way when it starts to extend its roots, it will have that loose soil to go into. And then by the time it gets stronger, it'll go ahead and go into the rest of the soil.
So I just pop it out of the container from the greenhouse. And here you can see there's a few roots around the outside. Not too many, but there is enough that the plant could get root bound. So I usually take my trowel and cut the sides so the roots will grow outside. And then especially on the bottom, break away those roots so it goes down deep.
Great.
And then I dig the hole and put the plant in, and then move the dirt around the side and push it in kind of firm, but not really hard, and then put the mulch back around the top. So the mulch will hold the water, and that way I don't have to water the plant so much. I will water this baby because now he's in the ground.
That's great. And speaking of water, is there a certain system? I mean, how do you water this garden? Do you check it first, or do you?
So I pay attention to the rain, and if we've had about an inch of rain in the week, that's going to be enough for the flowers and the grass to grow. So I don't worry about it then. But if it hasn't rained for a while, then I'll come out and look at them and go, how are you? Or how are you doing? So there's an easy way. You don't have to buy the tool, but this is a moisture meter. So you can take this moisture meter and put it in the ground, and I'm going to use this little plant guy because that ground is soft there, down at the root level, and you can see, oh, it's dry, please give me water. So that tells me it needs water.
Yeah.
But you don't have to buy one of these. You can do a couple other things that are free. You can come out and look at the leaves of the plants, and they'll tell you. Sometimes they're like, we're happy, or they go, we're not happy, this is not good, if they're dry. But they'll talk to you. Or you can stick your finger in the dirt. So this is where I'll use my plain finger, not my gloves.
Yeah.
And I'll put my finger down about root level, and I'll feel, how is that, does it feel moist or does it feel dry? So there's other ways that I check.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I get my my hose. Now for this one, I'll just use a watering can. But if I need to water the whole garden, then I'll bring out the hose. And I like it in part because it's a small garden. It doesn't take me too long to do that. And then I can check on the health of all of my plants as I'm watering them.
Mm-hmm. Great, great. That's perfect. And I think too, speaking of health of the plants, that segues nicely into my next question was, what do you do about pests?
Well, you know, I really haven't had that many pests. I think this whole year I've seen one Japanese beetle and no other bugs.
That's because they've been at my house.
They've been at your
Okay,
house.
well, okay. Yeah.
So, but I think the reason that I don't have many pests to worry about is because the ground is healthy. I have frogs that eat bugs, and I have crickets, and I have butterflies and hummingbirds and lizards, and creatures that eat bugs. And so I really haven't had a problem with disease of bugs because it's a natural system, ecosystem, and the frogs are happy because they have food.
Mhm. Except frogs don't eat deer, do they?
No, they don't eat deer. That would be an interesting. And there are deer in this area, as there are many areas here, and they love to come. It's like a buffet. Oh, look at all these things that are lovely. Now we can work on buying plants that are deer resistant. Some plants deer love, and I try not to buy those. Some plants deer won't eat, like daffodils, but daffodils are just one kind. So we try and get things that are deer resistant, that the deer just don't like the taste, which works most of the time, except in the spring when the leaves are yummy, soft, and delicious. And the hungry deer go, oh, this is a good snacky for me. So I have an example. Would you like to see the example?
Sure, let's look at an example of deer damage as if none of us have ever seen it.
So I'm going to walk in where I don't step on any of the plants. This plant is an echinacea, which pollinators really, really love. And you can see in the spring, I left these on purpose, you can see where the leaves were eaten by the deer. You can just see the stems that are left. Now, once the plant gets older, you can see there's baby leaves down here. They don't come back and get them because there's just not enough for them to eat.
That's great. Yeah.
So
yeah, and it's so true that echinacea can be on the seldom browsed list, but all games are off when they're hungry or pregnant or the growth is fresh.
I buy the spray that is not, there's no chemicals because I really don't want chemicals in my garden. I want to keep the bees. So I buy a spray that smells bad and tastes bad to the deer. It's got rotten egg in it. So I spray the leaves when they're babies, and then the deer go, oh, well, this isn't such a good buffet.
That's right.
I'll go somewhere else.
Well, and one of the important things about pollinator gardens is to have a long season of blooms. And that's what Barb has accomplished here. You want to have something in spring, something in summer, and something in fall. And she provides that in her garden so that the pollinators get food all year long. And that's what we want to do. I'm going to finish this talk. I think we covered everything, didn't we? Watering.
Well, you were going to ask me my favorite plant.
Oh, gosh.
Which one is my favorite?
All right.
Okay.
All right.
So, of all the plants, I really like all of them, most of them, I'll say, but I really like all of them. But my very, very favorite is this African blue basil. So that's why I have 4 of them. And you can see the bees love it. And these plants just continually grow through the summer. They get bigger and bigger. And the bees are here all day long. And sometimes, and honestly, sometimes after I've had a hard day or I'm just kind of grumpy, I come out here and listen to the bees. And they just make a happy noise. And then I'm not unhappy anymore.
Well, and as we know, African blue basil's in the mint family, and it's not an invasive mint for sure, but it definitely, anything in the mint family, you can't go wrong with pollinators, and especially bees. They just absolutely love it. Now, I know you made that easy, but what?
But I have to tell you, I have 2 favorites.
Oh, gosh.
So you can see over there, one of my favorites are the cleomes, and the cleomes bring in hummingbirds. And yesterday, while I was working in the garden, there were at least 3 hummingbirds that came by, and that's another cool thing. So they don't need a feeder when they've got that many flowers to feed off of.
Yes, and they do, and their beak, as they go in and out, they pollinate. So birds are pollinators too, which we don't often think about. And I noticed with my cleome, when I go out at night, that moths really love it. And we don't often think of moths, but moths have the caterpillars. They lay eggs on plants that the caterpillars will have be food for baby birds. So we want that too. So that is really amazing. Well, we're running out of time, but I do want to ask you to tell your milkweed story.
Okay.
And we could walk over to the milkweed while you talk, and
Okay.
then that way.
So when I started volunteering, we would go to gardens and we would pull out weeds. Well, because of the counting of the monarch caterpillars, because of that counting, there were too many milkweed plants in this one garden. And so we had to remove them, and I was very sad. So I said, can I have them? Because I like abandoned old, things that nobody wants. So all of these back here that are very tall, these are balloon milkweeds, and these feed the monarchs on their southward trip. So they've been up in the north in the summer, and they go south. They stop here in Greenwood, and they lay eggs on these plants. So I had 4 plants last summer, and I had like 43 caterpillars. It was just amazing. So as the season went on, I thought, I want to make sure I have some of these. And they're called balloon milkweed because they have little balls where the seeds are in. And as it was getting close to frost, some of them opened, and I could see the seeds flying away, and some of them were not. And I thought, well, what have I got to lose? I'll just experiment. So I brought in the rest of the seed pods before it froze, and I put them on my kitchen counter, and I forgot them. I just left them sit there. And then in January this year, I said, well, what can I do with these seed pods? Now, they've been on my counter for months, and so I researched on the internet, and I asked you, like, can I grow them in the greenhouse? So what I read was, get the seeds, soak them for 24 hours, and I did that. And I took the seeds in, and we put them in the greenhouse and potted them up, and we had more than 100 that grew well, and we took them to our plant sale along with some of the other kinds of spring milkweed, and we had a lot of people take them home. So from those 4 plants, now we have plants all over Greenwood because of the plant sale. So I'm going to be bringing more in the spring to plant them.
Yep, yep.
And then there are some that are volunteers. Like this one, he grew from a seed from the plant last year. So there are a number of other volunteers that are here. So that was a lot of fun, just to try this experiment.
Yes.
And it worked.
Well, and that's how we learn. And if you want to be a gardener, you have to be able to make mistakes, and that's how you learn. Or you have great successes, like you did with the milkweed, where you can, just now it's all over town. Her little family is scattered everywhere. So I don't know. I want to end this video by just encouraging you to just start small. If you have to, start in a container. You can start like I did at my house. I had these big old shrubs, and then I just put plants in between until I just finally redid it all and put in a really big pollinator garden. But you can start small. Try to think about spring, summer, fall. They all need it all during that time. And there's resources on our Bee City USA page where you can get handouts and find out what grows well in our area. So research that. Contact the master gardeners and see if you can get, you should be able to get someone to come and consult for your garden. We're in the middle of summer right now, but it won't be long that fall planting will be amongst us. So if you want to do some perennials, that would be a perfect time to plant them, is in your fall season. So with that, I want to thank Barb for all the time.
And if I can do this, anybody can do this.
Yes, because as she always says, I only know a little bit. So thank you. Well, and we wouldn't want to forget Barb's second favorite plant, the Cleome. This particular one does not reseed, which is nice. And because they can be a little bit wild out there once you get them. So this is her Cleome that she sees the hummingbirds come to, and I see the moths come to. So. Now, we're not going to leave you in the lurch here. We're actually going to give you a few plant names, because I know that's what you've been waiting to hear. So I'm going to walk through Barb's garden and just point out a few. We talked a lot about African blue basil and how special it is for pollinators, and of course it has a wonderful fragrance. And behind here she has a salvia, and that also is a great magnet. That's also in the mint family, so it is a great magnet for pollinators. And behind that she has a penstemon that has already gone, is already done, and that's your early morning, or not, I'm sorry, not early morning, but early season in spring, where you can have penstemon blooms for the pollinators. She has some, and that's a perennial, and the salvia is a perennial, and the blue basil is an annual. And then over here we have a zinnia, and that is an annual, and butterflies and bees love that. I've even seen some hummingbirds in there. This is a marigold that is a open pollinated one, so that's actually better for the pollinators than some of the ones that are more closed in. And you can also see she has some dianthus here, and that's a neon purple, and that's a perennial, and so that is excellent for all kinds of pollinators. And she has verbena, which is more of a lower growing plant, and she has echinacea. She has gaillardia, which has already got some bees. They just kind of hang out on there. They almost look like they're sleeping half the time. And so gaillardia, which is a native perennial, and that comes back every year. And we have some all kinds of rudbeckia. I see some sweat bees on there right now with their little back legs full of pollen. So we have some great brown-eyed Susan rudbeckia here. And over here she has more marigolds. She has more of the salvia. It's an annual salvia, but it reseeds. So, and not really horribly invasive, but she has a lot of seedlings coming up, so that'll be full. And this is a Irish Eyes rudbeckia, and so it's at the green center. And she talked about her favorite syringia that she had to have. There it is. So there's that one. And she's got her balloon milkweed so she can watch from her window. And that's growing really good for those the fall migration. And under that she has Gara, which is another great native and pollinator plant that's a perennial. Will come back every year. So many of these will die back, but they will come back in the spring, and you start to watch that.